It is 4:59, and I need a motion to approve the agenda for the board workshop.
So moved.
Brian,
Second.
Nicole, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oh my gosh, how many are?
Five.
5-0. And we are starting even before 5 o'clock, so we're gonna have our presenters share with us.
So that's
Yeah.
that's the thing. And Dr. Keys just texted me, said she's coming hot. You know that traffic that's out there. But I think this group is ready to go. MTSS report end of the year, talking about all this school improvement priorities. And I'm going to invite Lisa up here first, I think, to kick us off. And I think there's a team here that's going to share some of their experiences on school improvement initiatives and our next steps.
Do you have our slideshow?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Do you have the microphone? Yes, I do. Oh.
We have the slideshow. Do you have the microphone?
I'm not allowed to shuffle. Yeah, don't shuffle. It's very loud.
I mean, you can, it's okay.
Yeah, you don't kick me down.
Here's the clicker. Yeah, you don't want me with the clicker. Thanks, Lise.
Well, it's great to see everybody. Thank you so much for the opportunity for us to come here and share the work of our school improvement team. This is like the New York Yankees of educators. We have such a great all-star team here that's been able to join us tonight. It's such a wild, busy time of year. I appreciate all of you taking time out of your schedules to join us here tonight. Just a little bit of a reminder of who our school improvement team is. It's a very large team. It consists of teachers, lead teachers, our instructional coaches, building level administrators, our directors, Board of Ed members. You have joined us from time to time in different initiatives for it. And in the last few years, we have also had parent representatives on our school improvement team. So it's a big team, lots of stakeholders in it. And of course, it's all held up by Brett and Tanya. Without their support, none of this moves forward. So that is our team. And we're here tonight to really share the last 3 years of work, moving from exploration into implementation. And you're going to hear Kevin and Jackie and I talk about, kind of the 30,000-foot view of this work. But the business of the school improvement team is really the business of teachers, right? So you're going to be hearing from our teachers this evening to really talk about, what does this look like in full implementation and how are we going to get there? There are champions in this work. So a quick review. The current work that we're doing actually started in the 23-24 school year. And we started by exploring grading practices. And we spent that year reading a lot of research, watching webinars. We brought in some expert speakers on Superintendent's Conference Day. And at the end of the school year, that team culminated by writing what we called our Grading True North. And I'll read it to you because that is tiny up there. So in Fairport, our grading process is designed to objectively, intentionally, and transparently measure students' knowledge and abilities based on the district's collective success criteria. This approach provides multiple opportunities for growth, ensures clarity for both teachers and students, cultivates a growth mindset, promotes self-confidence, and maintains fairness by being free from bias. So that is our ideal state. And as you can imagine, just looking at the length of that statement, there are many, many subcomponents and foundational pieces that have to go into place for us to realize our ideal state. So the following school year, what we did was we broke that very large team into 3 subcommittees so that we were able to move that work forward. So one of our subcommittees was the standards subcommittee. You can't talk about grading without asking the question, what is it that we're grading? Or like, what is it that we want students to do? How do we operationalize this? Scott is going to come up here and he's going to talk to us about how many standards we have and what our task is as educators to operationalize them and get our students to perform those things. And then we had our grading action research subcommittee. So this was a team of teachers who was actively researching, trying out different grading strategies, doing the test experiment in their classroom, getting feedback from students, because in Fairport, obviously we want to be grounded in the research, but I always know that the next question I'm going to get is, but does this work for Fairport? Is this relevant to our community? Does this really work for our kids? That's a nice theory, but what does it look like here? So we have a subcommittee who, that is their charge. They're putting things into action and answering that question of what does it look like here and does it work for our kids? And then the third subcommittee that we broke into was homework, right? And a lot goes into homework, right? Like, what is the purpose? How do we do it? How do we communicate it? How do we collaborate with families? So that was another group that has been working. So you can see this is represented by this like overlapping Venn diagram. All of these ideas intersect and support each other. And we've been working on it a little bit separately, but a little bit together over the last 2 years. But what you're going to hear tonight is where we've gotten in our research and in our practices, and then what we're going to do to kind of bring it back together and move it forward into the future, bring it into alignment with Portrait of a Graduate and all the good things coming down from the state. So I'm going to hand it over to my esteemed colleague, Kevin Henson, to talk about grading.
All right, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for having us. I just want to take a quick moment to first say thank you to all of the people here tonight: Scott Parker, Kathy Ronzinski, Lonnie Malaber, Andrea Costanza, Teresa Sena. They're all representing this work, and they've all been in what I call the trenches in education for a number of years. And each one of them comes to you this evening with a true growth mindset of looking at things differently. Even though we've trained a specific way in college to be able to teach, it's really forced us to have to think of things differently as we're going along. So I applaud every one of you for being here. I really do. And I thank my partners here, Lisa Benson being the glue behind the scenes for all of these subcommittees this year and coming and saying, hey, what do you think about? Hey, what do you think about? As well as another partner of mine, Jackie Sauter, who came to me at the end of last year and said, hey, you're doing this grading stuff. Can I partner with you next year? And I said, absolutely. Giddy up, let's go. So this evening, I just want to give you a quick overview of where we started with the grading subcommittee and where we're headed. And if you will note, last year we did present, and I had J.J. Wagner here with me last year from Minerva, who talked very passionately about some of the things that he did in the classroom. But we started out with a cohort 1 back in 24-25. And that was supported by a year-long process by the Crescendo Group. The Crescendo Group is, the CEO of that is Joe Feldman. And for those of you who may be grading people or know about it, Joe Feldman is one of the gurus of grading and has done many publications, including Grading for Equity. Well, he's not the only one. He is one that has very, very research-driven. And actually, he came to the district some years back and presented to our K-12 educators to give sort of a baseline of what grading was like. So last year, we engaged with Crescendo, where we had a facilitator actually come on site a bunch of times, as well as offering some coaching from folks from Crescendo to help our educators along with taking a risk and doing some things with some projects that they did. And we'll talk about those a little bit later. Then, this year, we needed to let our educators know that we started with that we really mean this grading thing is important to us. And you know how sometimes you bring on new initiatives and they stick to the wall and they slide right down after that. And we didn't want that to happen with this. We really wanted people to believe that we are putting support behind this. So we continued with this cohort 1 this year with us getting together and working together. And that's where Jackie came along to help out with that and to see what we could do. We did that without the help of Crescendo this year. So it was just us two facilitating to see where that work was going to go. But then we decided that we also wanted to begin another cohort. So we began a cohort 2, but again, decided that we were not going to use Crescendo. So what we did was we turned to BOCES and we enlisted the help of one of our staff developers, Lorena Stavens, who actually came on board with us last year and took the cohort 1 training and has done other trainings through BOCES as well. So she and I worked together to offer to a smaller group of folks a year 1 of this particular work.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Are any other districts working with her as well?
They are, not to the extent that we are with the grading piece. Some of them are doing it with more with a homework and grading policy, which we're going to be working towards. But there's others now that have learned about us and want her to do some of this work moving forward. Right, exactly. So just to give you a quick idea, these are the different areas in which Joe Feldman sort of lists out some of the different grading practices. So our educators in our cohorts could choose those. And those numbers in parentheses just simply mean chapters from the book. So we had a number of people choose all of these. And what they really wanted and what we needed to establish with them was permission. Permission to take a risk and do something differently that they normally don't do. And it did not have to be with every single class of students. It could be through a small group just to get an idea and to bring that work back. Okay? And here are examples of some specific projects that were chosen between the cohorts, between revising grading components, assessment retakes and redos, rubrics, specific program work in terms of how they included creating a different kind of assessment strategy, as well as motivational strategies for students. All right, so there's just some quick guidelines there and some descriptors for that piece. So that said, I would like to invite up one of my wonderful colleagues and someone who I consider to be absolutely ahead of the game in the classroom, Lonnie Malaber, who is a French educator and lead educator at Martha Brown Middle School. So Lonnie began in cohort 1 last year, and she continued this year into cohort 1 with her grading. And I asked her just to come up and share a little bit about her work and how it may have transformed some of the things that are going on in her particular classroom, instructionally and assessment-wise. I'm going to give you the clicker.
Do I have to click or anything?
Yeah.
Do I have slides up there?
I put all of your slides in,
Oh,
but
my
you can
slides,
go through
okay.
them quicker
Okay.
if you need to.
And when you
don't
just
need to
press
do them.
this?
Yeah,
Okay.
got it.
Okay.
all good.
I'm like, wait a minute. So I'd like to just start by saying 24 years ago, I just started grading how my roommate graded. And, I was 22 and I had a wonderful classroom roommate and I didn't know, they don't teach you this stuff in school. And so, you just keep going through and you figure this is what everybody's doing. And then you kind of, you're taught that there's a better way. And so I think that with this better way, I kind of just jumped in with both feet, as Kevin knows that I do. I have found the results to be, I think, better for my students and better for me. And I think everybody is happier. So my first project, I worked with this great coach from Oregon. He was a Spanish teacher, a former Spanish teacher. So it was great to work with somebody who actually was teaching what I teach and was very aware of what being a language teacher is and what the grading looks like for that. So that was fantastic. And I'm always just trying to lower that affective filter with my students and get them to take risks. And for that, I really wanted to focus on motivating my students with their grades. So I started conferencing with students and kind of working through that as a motivator, giving them that one-on-one feedback. And I found that that was a great tool. And I felt the students really responded well to it. And then in mid-winter, I went to a local NICEFAL conference and went to a project called Fix Your Grades. And it was a teacher from Pittsburgh. And she kind of gave me like, oh, wait, this is exactly what we've been reading about. And you're doing this. And so I kind of bent her ear after the workshop. And then she even gave me her information. And I've reached out to her several times and been like, what's your parent letter look like? How do you explain this to people? And she's been so generous and kind. And so then my second project for the rest of the year was to move to a 4-point scale. So just a little bit about language in general, just to kind of dumb it down, but we kind of work on this path of proficiency, right? So we're always trying to move our kids along this path. And by the end of 8th grade, our goal is where that star is. We want them to be a novice high, but they certainly could reach past that, and they could certainly be that. Every kid is where they are on their path. And So using that kind of knowledge, I wanted to use these rubrics to kind of, now as he showed you earlier, these rubrics are really in the accuracy category, but I always looked at them as motivation, and which just goes to show that all of the pillars really do work together. So the 4-point scale for me was, I took it from you're exceeding the standard to get a 4. Mastery was a 3. 2 was you're not there yet, and 1 is no mastery. So that's what the 4-point scale says to do. Now that doesn't really work, because if you're mastery, you're not going to get a 75%, right? So that doesn't make sense. So how this woman in Pittsburgh kind of made this work for her was this way, that a 3, which is you're meeting the standard, really is a 3.6, which is a 90. And that's right where you should be. And I found that kind of adopting a more scale, a 4-point scale like this, I kind of made it into something more with making this rubric. So I kind of wanted a visual, because I wanted the kids to see that exceeding the standard is really reaching that next step in their proficiency path. It's giving, there's this guy, Bill Heller from SUNY Geneseo, and he's always saying, stretch and grow. Your rubrics and your grading should stretch and grow your students. If they are exactly where they are, you're not stretching them to move on. And so by making the highest level of the proficiencies of the rubric, asking them to go beyond to the next step, it really helps those higher level students, those students that are ready for the next step, kind of be able to reach it. It also gave them a little bit of a visual, which I think in middle school is always helpful for them to understand their grades. And it kind of put them right where they needed to be and see where they were in their assignments. Now this is just for, I forget if this is for writing or speaking. So I adopted these to writing and speaking, and as the year goes on, that rubric shifts to the next standards, right? It doesn't stay the same for 7th and 8th grade. It has to grow so that they're continuing to grow on their path. And the results were pretty great. So this is also just like, well, what do you do when it's right and wrong, right? So to be exemplary, it would be a 19 or a 20. And that also gave those kids who are really high achieving students an opportunity to have a little wiggle room, have a little breathing space. I don't have to be perfect to get that full score. I can get one wrong and I can still get that grade. And it can also allow students to show their proficiency without tanking, right? So not everything was exactly, if you're showing that proficiency, maybe you got a 16. Well, that's still going to be a 3.6, which is a 90. Even though that would have been an 80 if I had just divided 16 into 20, right? So it gave everybody an opportunity to have a little bit more space, but to still show where they were. Because again, it's all connecting to the standard, the learning target, right? So if you are actually reaching on, then you are getting that exemplary. If you have an 18, 17, or 16, you are proficient. You're exactly where you're supposed to be.
Can I?
Yes,
sorry,
go
can
ahead.
I ask a question?
I'm sorry, I'm just rambling.
No,
so please stop if you want me to.
I'm sorry to cut you off. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. No,
You want me
this
to go
is
back?
one more slide to the drawings with the.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that. So this is just something I'm not familiar with, and
Sure.
I imagine we might get questions on it from community members. So I wanted to ask this. So looking at, I love the idea of the 4-point scale as a grading combo. Can you kind of walk through the incomplete 2.4? I guess I'm looking at that as someone who's not in this grading world, as does not attempt the task, but still gets 2 points. Can you explain to me like the kind
Right.
of logic and idea behind that so I can
Because in
understand
this
it better?
grading for equity, our students are never getting below a 50, right? Because our students are, when the bottom half of your grading scale is a 60 to 0, it's bottom heavy to fail. And is that really an equity in grading? Because if it was truly equitable, you would be having a 10, every grade would only be 10 points, because that would be equitable. Right now, our grading system has 60 or below. That's the majority of the scale tipped towards them failing. So this is actually allowing kids to not maybe not meet the standard, but also not get themselves into a hole that they can't get themselves out of. Because this is a journey. This isn't like a stamp that you can't do this. This is a journey, and you have to, and you're going to, as we learn in languages, some kids, it clicks, and sometimes it takes a while for that click. And that's one thing that we learned and through the Crescendo group is it doesn't matter the journey from A to C. It just matters that they got to C, that they got the mastery. It doesn't matter if they never actually, if B, they skipped over it at some point because it all came together. And she kind of showed us that Courtney woman showed us that, like, if you, what we're looking for in the end is that they got where they needed to be. And some kids get there faster, and some kids take a little bit longer, and they shouldn't be punished in their grades because it took them longer to get there.
The way I like to, for my mind, it's just mathematically gives them a chance. It keeps them in the game.
It does.
Right, so if it's, I like what you said, like, it's, 60-0, that like takes you out of the game.
Yeah.
Right? So it just keeps you engaged in a
Because again, we're
mathematical model.
motivating these students, right? And where's the motivation when you feel unsuccessful time after time after time? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can imagine that is going to be the area that as teachers, you're going to get, and administrators, you're going to get the most pushback on. You know, how you have a child who, you know, you don't want to think about this, but you have a student who from September till the end of October, you know, gets a 2 for everything, never completes one thing. I'm sure you wouldn't think that a teacher would let that, you know, there's going to be interventions, but I'm sure that is something that is going to probably get the most pushback. And I'm, you know, and as much as we can all understand it and you want to give kids a chance, I imagine that's going to be hard for a lot of teachers and parents to wrap their head around.
I'm sorry, Jen. You may not be aware, but we have a minimum grade already of a 50.
Mhm.
And so some of what Lonnie's trying and some of the people in the cohort are changing their own mindset around that piece. And so none of our teachers get below a 50 for any student, even if they actually never attend a class. And that is a little bit hard of a pill to swallow at times, but a 50 is a 0. You get no credit. It's the same thing. So it's really about just situating that grade in a place where you can get yourself out of that
Yeah.
hole whenever that click happens.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think it's a big mind shift. I imagine
Yep.
for many.
And we get pushback.
Right.
Bob will tell you
Mhm.
every marking period.
Yeah.
I think it just shows the how antiquated our grading system is,
Mhm.
and then how far we have to come to understanding it.
But as a teacher, if can I jump in? Lonnie?
Sure. Yeah.
Lonnie, you're awesome.
That's all I wanted.
Yeah.
No, when you have a student who comes to class every day, and a lot of these kids who are really struggling with proficiency have a difficult time with concepts. You're not giving any value for their participation, their presence. How can you just say they get a 0 when they come to class? They maybe do try, and they can't
Mhm.
succeed at the moment. That's why I love
They'll-
the 50 to 100.
It just shows them that they can get there,
Yeah.
and that they're not out of the game. You know. I don't know what so what happened? So this is what happened. My results were that I found myself having opportunities for my accelerated students to move themselves up. And I also found that I had this one student one day, and she's one of my resource room students, and she said she got her paper and her assignment, it had this rubric on it, and she goes, I'm going to get this score. And I was like, you're making a goal for yourself because the rubric is there, the transparency is there. She can see what I'm looking for. She can make a goal for where she wants to be on that rubric. And it made her have a sense of, I think, purpose in her work. And I think for kids, it allowed them to stretch and grow. And so, you know, every kid is finding their space and their place. And the grading is doing that. And, you know, it never did that before. I can tell you that. And so I just feel like my students were happier. I actually surveyed them. I wanted to find out what their thoughts were because obviously I kind of made them my little guinea pigs. And I wanted to see how they felt. And overwhelmingly, every kid was happier because it allowed them to see where they were in their learning. It wasn't just a number on a paper anymore. It wasn't just a grade in school tool anymore. It actually showed them where they were on their language journey. So it created all of this transparency. It actually motivated them. And I felt like their grades were more accurate. I had some parents reach out to me about my recommendations for next year. And I had a student whose parents felt like her son should be in an honors course. And I said, but if we look at all of the last assignments, he's proficient. He's meeting his standard. He's exactly where he should be, and I'm so proud of him where he is. But if we're going to look at this, this shows us that he's going to be wildly successful in a Regents class. And of course, you can choose what you want, but I think this now is transparent. It shows the opportunities to stretch and grow, they're just not there yet. And I just felt like it allows the parents, students, and me to not just have an arbitrary number on their paper, it actually shows where they are. That's what my project was, and I plan on sticking with it because I feel like it's been good, and I feel like everybody has benefited from it.
Thank you.
No
Thank you.
questions. Okay, good. No questions? No? Okay. Okay.
Awesome. Good. So I just want to end before turning on over to the next group by saying that we had two of our wonderful colleagues, Andrea Costanza, who is our STEM instructional support coach, and Teresa Sena, elementary special education instructional support coach, who came to us, or me, at the end of last year and said, hey, we want to keep going and we want to support K through 12 educators. So what we did do this year with them is they did actually continue with the Crescendo group themselves, those two only, with a coach that they started with last year, because what they wanted to do is they wanted to bolster the professional tool belts with even more ways to support our educators moving forward. So it's almost a train the trainer kind of a situation. So heading into next year, they're going to be able to sort of cast the net out there and offer the support to our teachers around different grading practices. So we're excited to have them have that kind of knowledge moving forward. So thank you both for doing that as well. All right. So thank you for your time. We're going to turn it over to our standards subcommittee now, and I'll kick that to Jackie. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, everybody, for having us. So in a similar vein, we'll talk about kind of where the standards subcommittee has been and where we are now, and then I'll pass it off to Scott Parker. So last school year, our subcommittee really worked on two main projects. Our first one was to develop an unpacking standards protocol for Fairport. We looked at a variety of different protocols, and then we really worked through using those protocols across all departments and all grade levels to revise them to make a protocol that we felt worked for us, right? The goal of this was to allow teachers to look at a standard and really understand it. What do students need to be able to know and do in order to meet that standard? So that was our first step. And then we started to analyze how we want teachers to be able to prioritize standards in Fairport. So again, we read lots of research, lots of articles, and we settled on the real criteria. So that really looks at the R is readiness, the E is endurance, A, assessment, and L is leverage. So basically, looking at all of our standards in a K-12 lens. Are they building on top of each other? Are students going to be prepared coming up to a grade level? Do we assess that standard multiple times throughout the grade level so that they can show their competency and their learning? And then how do we leverage that? And that one's a really important one to us. We want our standards to live beyond that single classroom, right? So how can that standard be used outside the classroom? How can students see it across other contents they might take or even in their real world? So really, we spent that whole year designing these protocols to kind of prepare for the next level of work. So this year, some of that work has already begun in a couple different areas. So our K-5 special classes and special education across the district has really kind of kickstarted some of this work. So they've been able to look at prioritizing standards for content so that our students in our special classes, when they maybe can't reach all of the standards, we can really focus our time on those prioritized standards to make sure they get mastery of those. Also within K-5 RTI, specifically math, they've really spent some time looking at the standards progression and again, prioritizing those standards and what really needs to be hit in intervention for students. There's just not enough time in math intervention to hit every single standard. So what are those priority standards we want our students to work on? So they've been doing that work. Superintendent's Conference Day this year, we were able to do a full kickoff of standards where every 6-12 team met in department groups and they started that standardization process. So we taught them a protocol where they would look at the standards they have for a unit and decide what are the boulders, what are the big standards that have to transcend the unit, what are the rocks that need to support, and then those extra standards, which we refer to as the butterflies, that are great, they're good to know, but maybe they don't transcend or we don't see as much leverage with them. We then continued this work with elementary because really on that conference day we focused on secondary. So elementary within their faculty meetings was able to then dig into this a little more in the area of math and look at how those standards progressed all the way from kindergarten to algebra. So they really started to see that some of the standards, they are going to be our priority standards because we need them to get to algebra, even if you might not see that in second grade. And then as we've been working through the new Portrait of a Graduate initiative coming down from the state is actually saying part of that initiative is going to be to roll out priority standards. So our work with standards connects directly to that state work, which is very important to us. So we have done a lot of exploration. So really now we're in the installation phase. So as Lisa continues to talk about what's next for SIT, we're really going to look at how does picking those priority standards connect with grading and ensuring that once we choose priority standards, that's where our grading is focusing on. So that will be the work of the subcommittee next year, mostly 6-12 at this point. Our elementary report card is already standards based, which is great. So those priority standards are already outlined in that way. So we'll continue to move that work to 6-12. But for a little more detail of what we're working on, the amazing Scott Parker, so he is our English lead teacher at Martha Brown, is going to share some of our work.
Why, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a Boulder story. So 36 years ago, I was trained by the likes of Madeline Hunter. And you always have to start with an anticipatory set. So here's my set. I want to hook you, okay? I have a boulder. I couldn't bring it. I would have developed a hernia for sure. On the corner of my property. And one day, I came home, and my oldest son, who's 27, just flew in from Chicago today for work to visit us. He came home with me and he said, "Dad, the rock's gone." I said, "What are you talking about? The rock's gone." Now I'm talking a boulder. It's like this. That thing is huge. It's gone. Completely disappeared. So I walk out to where that boulder is, and there's a mark, and it's like it's being dragged up the street by a boulder monster. I'm talking, there's no way this rock should be gone. I follow it up the hill, and now the mark in the road starts doing this. I say to myself, how in the world did this happen? So I turn around, I get in my car, because I stop walking at the top of the hill. I get in my car, and I grab my son, and we start following the mark. We get up to the top of the hill, down to the other side, and there's my boulder in someone's front yard. And when I get to it, it's got yellow paint all over it.
Was it in Brett? Yeah.
Yellow paint all over it. A school bus from Fairport picked that boulder up, got lodged under the bus,
No.
and ended up. Oh, this was years ago. I'm going to tell you right now that I know the driver isn't here. I know the driver isn't here. But boulders are huge. And I got it back. Yeah, they brought it back with a skid steer. It's before your time. It was before your time. Yeah. So I thought you would enjoy that boulder story. I was going to bring it, but I couldn't lift it. And I was also going to bring some rocks, but I didn't think you want it. But I did bring trees. I did bring too many because I didn't want to cut too many trees down. This is like the life of a sixth grader. Science, social studies, math,
Oh, thanks.
ELA. This is what a new teacher would walk into. And we say, here you go, this is what you got to teach this year. And the great thing about the state is nothing is consistent. The formats are all different. It's really complicated. So, number one, I thank you all for supporting Brett to set up this team to have standards as an important part of it. Because standards are what we do. And we need to start with the standards in order to drive instruction. And then we're going to see our little diagram with all the three, the homework, the grading, and the standards. That's going to be like Olympics gone wild. Because we're going to see common assessments in there. We're going to see instruction. It's going to overlap because it's all part of it. And it all starts, that's why I'm so fired up about it, it all starts with the standards. Because if we don't know what we're supposed to teach these kids, how are we going to be successful with them? And then, most importantly, create consistency across grade levels and across buildings, scaffold. It's so common sense. So now you tell a 22, 23-year-old teacher, this is what we have to teach. That is so complicated. Now I know math and I know science have done a really nice job at starting some of this work where they're finding these boulders. So the process to unpack the standard is so logical. It's going to be a great opportunity for teachers to really look at how can we use a standard to help us drive our instruction. And then our instruction drives what we're going to assess. And then we then further that development and we create common assessments. And now we have consistency. And I know as a teacher and also as a parent of 3 boys in Fairport, I had one of my boys go to JP because thank you, we get the privilege of filling out a document and bringing our kids where they want. It's a beautiful privilege. 2 of my kids chose Martha Brown, 1 chose JP. And to have the programs consistent in the grade levels, in the elementary schools, we have to have a process. And thank you to Lisa and to Jackie for really leading us through an incredible process where it was so logical. So once we developed that first document that was shown, we went ahead, do I click?
Mhm.
I like clicking. We went ahead and we adopted as a team the 15-day challenge. And it's a really great tool that was so logical at creating structure to unpack the standards so that we could find those boulders. Now, I had the privilege of meeting with all of you also because Becky Short asked me to come in and talk a little bit about the SIT team. And I don't want to ruin everything, so I saved my boulder story for you. And I know you're glad you weren't here when that happened, especially our new business director. Yeah, he's out there looking for that boulder. This process, this 15-day challenge, we went through a little. Maddie from the high school, the assistant principal, did a fantastic job leading us in an exercise where we used the 15-day challenge with a unit that we brought. And we were able to prioritize the standards for that unit. And one of the questions that was asked in our meeting at Martha Brown, was what are we going to do with the other standards that we haven't identified as boulder? So it's really like I shared with Erica that, you know, usually if you pull a boulder out of the back when they're doing the work, the smaller rocks are the same material. So we're going to pull those boulders and then we're going to match the standards because they're the same material, but it's just going to be like a hierarchy. So by doing this, we know we're going to do this, this, and this. And that's going to be our goal. This is a ton of work. This is a ton of work because now that's our next step. And Jackie and Lisa are in the process of creating teams that we're going to sit down and now we're going to start unpacking. That's the hard work. I feel like I did the easy work, being on the committee, working with these great people. But the hard work's coming because if we don't have 80% buy-in from the staff,
Right.
you know the numbers. We got to get to 80%.
So Scott, do you feel like this is different than past maybe tries at this?
This is so, I wouldn't even be here if it wasn't. Yeah, I'm 37, now I'm going to be 37 years into
Right.
this.
You've been,
If I wasn't excited about this, I would say no thank you. Thank you for asking. I've done, I said you could foil my account. You can look at all my documents and you can see I've been a teacher leader in this district for almost 25 years. I started as a lead teacher in 2000, I think, at Martha Brown, and I took a few years off in the middle, and now I'm back. This process is legit. It's going to work. I feel strongly about it. And next year, I'm going to stand up in front of teachers, and I'm going to say this. Because you have to have teachers saying it. You know, Lonnie, with the homework and the grading, it's so, like I was sitting there, like I went back to my room after you presented that and made some changes to the way that I did things. Teachers have to buy into it, and teachers have to sell it. So that's where we're headed. The structure, the process, it's all there. The plan, the vision, I feel really good about it. And I love how, and I think of the school district have all these gears, and these are some gears that are really working together, and I'm a car guy and a motorhead, and I feel like the motor is getting tuned up. I feel like your work and the work here, we're tuning this motor up. And what matters more than anything to me in the world is we're tuning it up so it runs right for the kids. And I know that's why you're putting all this time into what you do. So I appreciate you. Thank you for letting me share today. Do you have any questions for me?
I know it's so hard because we probably have a million comments and questions, but I know there's more people.
Come over and meet with me.
I know, that's what I was going to say. I'm sure.
I'm going to make a really quick comment, and I would just like to say, as somebody who works with student teachers, like we're constantly telling our student teachers, as like novice teachers, to like never stop learning. And I think when you have veteran teachers who are still embracing new learning and new ideas, I think like that is the most inspirational thing for other teachers to see, and that you never stop learning. And I like
So
that
you
just
let
inspires
me
me in my work. So
You let me kind of flash just something philosophical. And this is what I love about Fairport. So we don't think we're the best, because the best is scary. Because when you're the best, it feels like you've done everything that you need to do, and you're done. But if we're better, if your feet hit the floor in the morning, and you say, "Today I want to be better," and we do it together, we be better together, this engine's going to run nice. So I appreciate that so much.
well, I appreciate all of you. So
Yeah. So here
I'm
we
just
go.
sitting here.
Who's next?
I think that's me. I think I'm up.
Come on. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. All right, we did it. We made it to the third subcommittee. We're in the home stretch here. All right, so homework. Okay, so last school year, our team really grounded ourselves in homework. We reviewed 38 policies, starting in Monroe County. We took a peek at what everyone else is doing. Then we expanded our scope to New York State, saw what other districts in the state are doing. And then we looked across the country at what other districts across the country put out public facing about their homework. And what we discovered was that people in California and Colorado, man, did they like to write a policy. We really appreciated their work and did adopt some of the things that they had in their work. So we did all those reviews. Oops. Oh no. Did I do that? Who did that? No.
It was Brett.
That's all right. I have it right here. I'm all good. Okay, so we were looking at the policies. Then we reviewed 26 articles that had the pros and cons of homework for students and families. This same committee then went on to create surveys that were administered to elementary teachers, elementary parents. They were also administered to secondary students, secondary teachers, secondary parents. We took all of their feedback, and then we started writing some drafts. And we had such a large committee, we really had to be thoughtful about how we were structuring that draft writing so that everyone's voices could be heard in it, right? Because if you have a room of 50 people, the person that shouts the loudest, right, that's going to be the policy. So what we did was we used a snowball strategy, just like our teachers in the classroom would use. And we broke into 6 groups, and those groups started drafting their policy, and then they merged. All right, so we got to the end of last year, and we were down to 3 drafts. And we had all of our feedback from our stakeholders, and that's how we entered this school year. So we had our 3 drafts, we got them down into 1. And in getting it down into 1, we were also considering our 1,428 parent survey responses, our 350 teacher responses, and 2,196 student responses. That is what a captive audience is, right? Like, they are here in school, and we're like, the next couple of minutes, you're doing the homework survey. So
That's great.
and the kids really had a lot to say. And they honestly, they had a lot of great ideas. We had open-ended responses on it. And they're like, you know what, this is what works for me. And we were reading it, and we're like, yes, that makes a lot of sense. We should definitely do it that way. So it was really great to read all of the feedback. We did use, obviously, AI. These are very large numbers. We used Thought Exchange, and they helped to summarize. But I will say for the student responses, we had over 900 students actually write in. And I just feel like, you know what, if a kid is going to take the time to write it, I'm going to take the time to read it. So I will say that the AI summary was accurate. Those student responses, though, what the kids weren't writing like, we don't want homework. That isn't what they said. They said, you know, we know that homework, and particularly because these are secondary students, like, we know that homework is connected to our success in the class. But what we do want is for you guys to work together so that you're not piling on with the homework. And, you know, they make a great point. And when we think about, like, our high school, it's a physically big space, right? Like, you can work all week and never see your colleague that works on the other side of the building. Right? Like, maybe you see them when you're picking up your mail, and you're probably not asking them, like, hey, what's your homework policy like in your classroom, right? I hope not, right? I hope you're asking them about their kids, their weekend, and all of the pleasantries, right? So we really have to be thoughtful about how we are coordinating with each other to move forward. All right, so we had we took the responses, we got down to 1 draft. Then we brought it out to focus groups. So we had teacher focus groups in every building. We had 2 parent focus groups. We had 2 student focus groups. We took all of that, and we then put that into a draft. So that was, at that point in time, draft number 11. We brought draft number 11 back to the homework subcommittee to look it over. Then we brought it to the grading subcommittee, because you'll probably remember at the top of the hour here, we said, you know, this started with grading. So we got feedback from the grading subcommittee, and it was a very thoughtful conversation about, you know, we know what best practices are and what the research says. We also know where we are as an organization and the learning that still needs to happen. So try to strike a nice balance there for what can go in, and it's a starting point. So that got us to draft number 12, which we then brought to the full SIT committee, and we did a final tuning protocol to get to lucky draft number 13. That's it. So we have our homework regulation, and at the heart of the regulation, it's really about a balanced life for students and collaboration with families. Now, as I said earlier, we took that California model. It's a 5-page document, but at the heart of every sentence is this balanced for kids? Are we collaborating with families? The key elements, all homework, no matter what grade level, aligns to these things, right? It has to be aligned to curriculum objectives. It has to serve a clear instructional purpose, right? It has to be to practice, to reinforce, to get you prepared, or to extend your learning. It has to be designed so that it's accessible for all students. We have to support parents and really partner with them if we're going to set that homework as an expectation, we have to be ready to support the parents, not just the kids. We also want to structure it in a way so that kids are growing and they're being more independent with their responsibility. We have to include timely and constructive feedback. So on the student and teacher surveys, ask teachers, do you give regular feedback on your homework? And teachers said, yes. We asked students the same question, and they said, no. So I have a lot of confidence that kids are getting feedback, but what we have to do is define it, right? Like kids need to know what to look for. Like, oh, when you tell me to go into Google Classroom and review the answer key, like that is a form of feedback, right? So I can see I got number 5 wrong, or I need to go back and practice number 8, something like that. Or it can, feedback can take on a lot of different forms, and it is completely up to the teacher to define what feedback looks like. But the important thing is that we communicate to the kids and the families, like, this is what feedback looks like, and you should be using that feedback to get yourself prepared for a summative assessment that's coming up. Our homework regulation has to be aligned with our religious observance policy that we have coming out. And if you're going to have AI as part of your homework, it has to be aligned to our AI rubric, which I know you've heard a lot about this year. So it's referenced here as well. Within our document, we do go on to define the responsibilities. So there's administrator responsibilities, teacher, parent, student, and in going through the focus groups, there was such a sense of relief to see that responsibility list. Each group said, oh, I'm so glad that they know what they need to do to help out with this. Oh, I'm so glad I know that you know what your responsibility is in helping me be successful with that. And I just thought it was an unexpected discovery for me, but all of the groups came to that they were so glad that they were no longer isolated in it. And some of the teachers said that, they were like, I'm so glad to see that, like, we're really spelling it out for kids, and we're really spelling it out for parents, and we're really spelling it out for administrators, that this is a collective effort in moving forward. And then, yes, the very last part of it is grade level specific recommendations. So that is how it flows. All right, so in April and tomorrow, I've been going on a roadshow to the faculty meetings, and we've been, all of the teachers have seen the new regulations. They also have reviewed frequently asked questions document that went out with it. We got those frequently asked questions from all the focus groups. We're like, well, if the focus group is asking the question, other people are gonna ask it. So we had that as a resource. So teachers have had a chance to review that. And then, we're just talking about where we are in the process. We've spent the last 2 years researching and writing and taking feedback. And now we're at this point where we're like, okay, we wrote the thing and now we have to do the thing. So we're right there, we're right in the center. So to alleviate some of the anxiety, right? We talk about, next year is like the first pancake. Will it be edible? Absolutely. Will it be the wrong color? Probably. Might it be a little raw in the middle and too crispy on the edges? Also a strong possibility, right? But an ugly pancake is better than no pancake, right? So next year is the first pancake year of homework regulation, right? So when I'm going to the faculty meetings, we're talking about, what are we going to do to make sure that we're collaborating? That's a hidden challenge in this, right? So we're talking about that. We're talking about how we're going to communicate with families and that sort of thing. So that is where we're at. And now I'm going to hand it over to Kathy Ronzinski. Kathy was with us the first year of the subcommittee, and then she's like, I didn't realize this was a 2-year commitment. And but Kathy, she was with us in the beginning, and now she has seen the finished product. Also, you have a special knowledge set specific to homework, like outside of the subcommittee work. So you're a real ace up the sleeve for us. So I'm very glad that you're able to come and give your expertise and give your opinion on where we're at so far.
I feel a little bad coming from the elementary world that I'm going to speak a little bit to secondary, but
do your thing.
Take it with a grain of salt, all you secondary people. Okay. Thanks so much for letting me speak tonight. I really appreciate being here. And I've had some of your kids, so you guys know that my homework policy has run the gamut from packets for your Ellie to nothing for your Ellie. So, clearly my thinking has changed over time related to homework. And a lot of it was my own kids going to school. Some of it was being in the master teacher program, and a lot of the things we did through that. Andrea was too with me. Some of the things we looked at through that also talked to the grading aspect and the homework, how homework fits in with everything we're doing. So I really kind of got a little passionate about it. Have some very, some opinions of my own. And Lisa asked me to talk about, four things. What I was expecting from the homework policy was the first one. And basically, I expected the policy to tell me whether I should be doing a packet or not. Okay, and how long that packet should take if I was giving a packet. And I was surprised that it doesn't. So it's not as prescriptive as I thought it was going to be. And instead, it gave me some clear guidelines, such as that homework has to serve the noted purpose that Lisa talked about, whether it's practicing something, reinforcing the skill, preparing to learn something, so like reading some background information, or extending the learning. And it supports caregivers and requires feedback. Those were the things that hit me right off the bat that I really appreciated from all the research. You saw how many things we looked at, that those are the things that kept popping out. So I was really glad they ended up in the final policy, and that we can use that now to really define our practices collectively. And we started to do that at our grade level, our faculty meeting last month, where the second grade went through and figured out what are we doing for homework and when and what are we using, and we're done. So Dudley's done, and we just have to now talk to the other buildings to finalize second grade. It's a little bit easier at the elementary level to do that. Then feasibility. So at the primary level, there's not very many changes for us. At our building, most of us use similar resources. We have similar expectations. Read every night, practice your math facts. We have already met, I already told you that, and we look forward to collaborating with the other buildings. I think 3 to 5 is going to be a little bit different, obviously, from K2. So, and I think for them, it's going to be tricky when you have kids, if you're giving homework, to give them independent practice on something they don't know how to do yet independently. So we can't, we have to really identify what is practice and what is reinforcing, and make sure we're not giving homework on things they're practicing. And that might be different student to student, right through 12th grade, right? And that's a big change for our secondary teachers, because they have to teach more like an elementary teacher. Everything Scott was saying, I'm like, yep, we do that. Yep, we do that. So I'm like, it makes me feel good that we're on the right track. And at the higher levels, I think it will give a good baseline to continue refining what we're doing. Just like we are on the elementary level, which is a little bit quicker process to refine that, we need to do that at the secondary level too. We need lots more conversations, research studies, book reviews, conversations and collaboration, because as you guys talked about earlier, it's a big lift. There is a lot that needs to be done, and bringing everybody around to the same page and to have the same passion and desire for these outcomes, I think we really have some work to do in that area. Let's see. As the kids, if we start with the identified purpose, as the kids, and feedback, as the kids move towards mastery, we need to have conversations about when to grade, what to grade, and as we move towards things such as no grades for practice, which is what I think should happen, and just have grades for reinforcing. That we're going to identify our target questions and our areas of misunderstanding as we talk to each other, and then we should grade to reinforce. Yeah, I already said that, sorry. These are just my notes. The impact that it has on me is to help me be more intentional about what I'm doing and what would be assigned and to whom, and to plan the feedback that I'm going to give kids. For us at K2, it happens in the classroom. It's not really homework. It's what we do every day during class time. So, but a lot of that is at the secondary level is taking place at home. Some of it's taking place at home. So it's really tricky for those teachers to plan what they're going to ask each child to do and who can do that independently. And the impact on families is, I think it's great. They can understand the goals of our homework policies and how to help students and when they should reach out to the teacher. That way they have their expectations and of what we are doing and they know when it's appropriate. And it gives them reassurance that the teachers are more intentional about assigning homework and giving feedback, but also knowing that it's just the first step. You know, as Lisa was showing, you know, we're right on that. It's the first pancake, like she said. So it's important that we're talking about homework and how it fits in to the education of the whole child and Fairport. Thank you so much.
Kathy, I think we still have some of those packets in our, no, I think we still have some of those packets somewhere in the basement where we're cleaning them out.
Treasure trove. I'm sure she'll appreciate them.
There you go.
I was like sitting here going, I don't think Ellie had homework in second grade. Why? Like what? She didn't.
So we've made it to the last one. All right, so what is next for next year? Well, next year we're going to continue working on grading standards and homework, but we're going to move to really align it to New York Inspires, right? Specifically, Portrait of a Graduate and the requirement for us to have an educational assessment strategy. And when we think about, you know, talking about standards and what does it look like and how do we know if a student made it, like that's exactly what the state is challenging us to think about, right? Like, yes, students have to demonstrate academic proficiency, but they also have to demonstrate that they're future focused. They have to demonstrate that they are a global citizen. They have to demonstrate that they're critical thinkers, right? And this is not new for Fairport, right? We have Future Ready all over all of our merch. And we have Whole Child, right, is right there in our mission statement. So, you know, it's very much, like, yes, the state is asking us to do these things, but it is very much aligned with our philosophy anyway. And it is very much aligned with this work that we've been doing. It's a really natural next step into working on Portrait of a Graduate and working on our assessment strategy. Scott, you're going to love working on the assessment strategy next year. Jackie, Stacy, and I, and Kevin, we're going to be meeting with our friends from BOCES in a couple of weeks, and they're going to help us kind of come up with that bigger map of how we're going to do that. Then we're going to take those boulders and the rocks, and we're going to tag them and say, well, this one is part of summative, this one's part of a formative. Yeah, keep them away from the buses. And so we're just going to keep rolling with it and go right on into next
So
year.
I think you really set us up well to all the leaders here, to Dr. T and the instructional leadership team, school improvement team. This is just going to be perfectly set up as we roll out the next iteration of our strategic planning. You will have a step-by-step process to neatly put in here with very specific steps on how we're going to continue to grow grading standards and homework. So I appreciate your time and effort here. Being in the district for 20 plus years, seeing it come to this step, it's really exciting. We're going to continue to grow it because we never arrive, as you said in the beginning. We always strive to do better. So Dr. T, appreciate all your leadership. It's an expression of all the great work that happens. So thank you, Lisa and team.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
And Lonnie, I feel like when I have my next student teacher, I'm gonna have to like pick your brain more.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
I'm going to go look at that rock, Scott.
I've been off for the last 2 semesters because there haven't been any Spanish or French. So like I'm just twiddling. Like. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Enjoy some
Enjoy the
Bye, Lisa.
weather.
Thank you.
Bye, Jack. Good luck with that game.
And up next,
Actually, but, oh, and she's Spanish though, right? MC.
So I'm going to
yep. So we're
ask
gonna,
Jeremy Nardone come forward, our Assistant Superintendent for Business and Operations, and the team from M&E. He'll introduce the team and talk about our next steps. I know that we are in the planning stages of our 2020-25 capital improvement project, and we're also at a point where we are studying optimal ways to make sure that we take advantage of opportunities to be sustainable and to meet those expectations and priorities and do it in a way that meets the community's expectations. So Jeremy Nardone.
Yes, thank you very much. So I am learning so much about heat pumps and sustainability in regards to heat pumps, and it's refreshing. So as Mr. Provenzano said, we're always looking for ways to be more sustainable and also to be more efficient when possible. So one of the things that was brought up was the use of heat pumps versus a traditional rooftop unit, because we are replacing a good amount of them coming up in the 2025 project. So what we did was we worked with our construction team, Labella, Campus, and ME to say, hey, teach us a little bit about this. Is it good for our district? Every district has different parameters, different things that make it make things better for it or worse for it. So we really wanted to bring in the experts with that. So with that, I will turn it over to ME. We got Adam here and Melanie here. Melanie is from the actual sustainability division of ME. So I'll have them bring up. We have a presentation for you. And then obviously if you have questions during or at the end, we'll be available for any questions.
Good evening, everybody. So I'll kick this off and then introduce Melanie, let her introduce herself and then turn it over to her. She's by far and above the expert when it comes to all things energy. So my name's Adam Roeder. I am a project manager at Salas O'Brien ME Engineering, formerly ME Engineering. I have been the senior engineer prior to that for the Fairport Central School District capital projects going back to the transportation building construction. So my primary role was mechanical engineering, now taking over as project manager for the last 6+ months, while still supporting the role for some of the mechanical engineering pieces. So very familiar with the district and the projects that we're doing here. I just want to touch a little bit on kind of where we were and where we are now here. So this is not a very quick process to pull this information together. You know, we really want to study the data. We want to study the impact. We want to take into account everything that we've done over the last 10+ years at the district as it pertains to heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and efficiencies associated with those equipments. One of the big pushes as you know, in the last major capital projects was to replace all of the old boiler plants and get high efficiency heating hot water systems into the buildings. And that's been very successful to date. And that alone has a big energy component to it. So when we start talking about how do we approach these projects, it's a conversation between fiscal impact, capital impact, serviceability, maintenance long-term, the expertise of the district to support the equipment that we're designing around. Sometime technology goes in and it costs a lot to maintain that, and the district doesn't have the ability to do that. So we always try to take those things into account. Efficiency, energy usage, decarbonization, and desire to go all electric all factor in. And you know, a lot of times what we find is that one technology, one focus doesn't always serve to all of the other items. So you might really want to go into decarb, but that comes at a cost. That might have a high capital impact. Or you might want to go to a higher efficiency, which might not let you go decarbonization. So we're always trying to weigh those balances. The analysis that we've done here is taking our real world approach for what we're doing in the 2025 phase 1 capital project and looking at Brooks Hill Cafeteria as a starting target point. It was a great representation of how do we best apply heat pump technology to what we're currently doing with what we would hope would be the least impact to the project, right? So that's kind of where we started, and where that goes from here, I'll let Mel present. But this goes back to mid-December. We've been having almost weekly conversations and meetings and discussions. Climate GFL, Brady Ferguson and Brett Peters provided some presentation and information to the district and the design team where we evaluated some funding sources and technologies and means to kind of approach some of these avenues that we would be looking at. And that's really gotten us to this point with Mel's analysis. So I'll turn it over to her and let her continue the presentation.
So I'm Melanie Stakoyak. I'm a principal at ME Engineering. I lead the Energy and Sustainability Group. So we focus a lot, as Adam said, on decarbonization, electrification, trying to find solutions for buildings to integrate those types of technologies and be smart about it. So what we looked at here was two different options. One was an air source heat pump option, which does heating and cooling with electrification. And the other one was a more traditional approach, which was basically using gas to do the heating through the use of a hot water coil. and what we call is DX cooling, which is refrigerant-based cooling within the unit. So like a packaged refrigerant cooling type solution. That's like more of a traditional solution. So the air source heat pump, the difference between the two of them, both of them, what we did is because you just replaced your boiler plant recently, we wanted to maintain and utilize that technology and the efficiency of that. So the air source heat pump does have like a backup hot water coil to provide also heating when the temperatures get really low. Heat pump technology sometimes has a little bit of difficulty in really cold days, so that provides a little bit of backup there. So it's minimal when that would be utilized, but at the same time, so that we would consider the air source heat pump a fully electrified solution and the other one a traditional non-electrified solution. So that's kind of the difference there. Are there any questions about that?
What's the source, the heat, the actual heat temperature, or the temperature that's needed before that coil kicks in?
Yeah, I believe that it was 40 degrees was the maximum that would occur. We oftentimes find that we can operate quite lower than that, maybe to like 25 or something. So we'll kind of see once it's installed how it operates. So we looked at some pros and cons of each. With the traditional unit, some of the pros is you're used to the facilities department is used to the maintenance of that type of technology. It's been around for a long time. It's a normal packaged rooftop unit that everybody's very familiar with. It costs less than a heat pump solution. It uses less electricity because you're using natural gas to heat rather than electricity to heat. And then some of the cons, though, is that you use natural gas, which means carbon, the use of carbon or carbon emissions. It does increase, your energy output is higher, or energy consumption is higher than a heat pump unit. And then it also has a higher operational cost as well. So on the heat pump side, it consumes less natural gas, which means lower carbon footprint. It reduces, it says carbon emissions on there, consumes less energy overall, decreases the annual operation cost. We did an analysis to determine what this was because you have to look at the utility rates of natural gas and of electric and then predict how much consumption will be for the year. But some of the cons is that it's a higher equipment cost. So first cost is going to be a little bit more. You do still have to use some fossil fuel for that supplemental hot water use, like I said, at really low temperatures. And the maintenance technology may take a little bit of training just to learn about heat pump technology and how to, what needs to be serviced on that. One thing is the compressor within the unit, although both units do have compressors in them. The one in the heat pump unit would need to be replaced more frequently than the traditional type unit because it's working during heating and cooling, when in the traditional unit it's only working during cooling. And then just minor things, weighs a little bit more, which isn't an issue, I don't think, for this application. So I think that's about it. Switch to the next slide. So then we did the analysis. I know this is a little small here, but what this is a breakdown of the energy usage of both options. The top line represents a traditional solution, and then the second line is a heat pump solution. You can see the electricity, there's values for how much electricity in each, what the peak usage is in electric, and then there's natural gas as well, the consumption in therms, and then we convert that to the cost, so you can see what the difference is annually, what the equipment uses. So when you compare that and you look at this, what you see is that the heat pump solution uses a lot less energy. If you convert that, if you look at, we use a measure of MBTUs. So the amount of energy that it uses over the course of the year is less than a traditional solution. Although it's a lot more electric, we're also finding that it costs less to operate over the year. But the first cost to install it is more than the traditional solution. So if you take the savings and you look at the first cost and the differential between the two solutions, there is a payback of about 16 years, which is less than the life of the equipment. So we would recommend that solution typically. So that's kind of what the results are showing.
And that has been updated with Fairport Electric.
Yes.
So when we first ran this, the payback was 6 or 8 years, and then that wasn't using Fairport Electric costs. They've actually taken our bills, looked at them, and because Fairport Electric's rates are a little cheaper, that's why it actually extends the useful life to, or the payback period to 16 years. And what I'll say is, just because the payback period is 16 years, does that mean it's not worth it? I can't answer that question because people have cars, and cars don't have a payback, right? Your car is for a purpose to get you to work. So that's not saying maybe from a cost perspective, it wouldn't be worth it, but that's not all that we're looking at when we're thinking about sustainability.
Then what we also did was looked at grants and rebates and said, hey, can we get some money back for a high performance solution? What we found is that Fairport Electric is who provides your utilities here. So unfortunately, there's a thing within New York State called the SBC. It's a systems benefit charge that everybody pays into that funds these programs. And unfortunately, Fairport Electric doesn't participate in that. So a lot of the grants that others are taking advantage of, the school district wouldn't be available to the school district. There are some competitive programs.
Sorry, I apologize. Are Dudley Northside also still Fairport Electric?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, I live in that area, but I'm RG&E, so I didn't know if it changed.
Yeah. The borders are sometimes very funny. Yeah.
It is weird. It is. I didn't realize they had it until we asked recently.
Yeah. So there are a couple competitive programs like the Carbon Challenge that we'll keep looking at if you do end up implementing the solution periodically. These programs renew and then make funds available to people that don't pay into the SBC. So we'll keep looking at that if that's the way you end up going. Then there's also an independent energy efficiency program that has a very small grant. It's about $1,200. So what we regularly do, my team, we go through and we look at these all the time because people are looking for grants. So if something comes up, we can look at that when it comes time for implementation.
So just for perspective, if you didn't catch it on the previous slide, the cost of this one particular unit doesn't obviously fit every single scenario that we're currently designing around right now. But for this particular unit, it's close to $100,000 for the cost of the heat pump system. So the rebate in that IWP is around $1,200. So it gives you just an order of magnitude of the level of money you could potentially get back. It's a very small amount, unfortunately.
And the cost for the air conditioning was the 85, right?
The previous, the traditional unit was around 85.
And no grants on that either, right?
No, that likely wouldn't have, I don't think even qualify for the IEP.
It has to be like better than code basically. So
yeah.
So that particular equipment, a piece of equipment was pretty much equivalent to what code would require.
And something that I have a call into too, usually when you receive grants or rebates, it's recorded in a different fund, and then it's not eligible for other aid. So one of the questions I have out there, if we get this, does that negate the building aid on that $1,200? So just something I'm looking into just for some more clarification on that. But usually when you receive a grant, you record that separately in a federal fund, and that's paid 100%. But being a small dollar, I don't think they'll have an issue with it.
Hypothetically, if they came out with more of the CNI, the NYSERDA funding, and we got that grant, does that free up money in our K-8 project for other things?
If you get a grant, yes, it would free up the capital project money if it's paid for 100% by the grant. Usually what will happen with those grant monies is you have to front the money, and then you get the money in the back end, so the only issue is cash flow. But luckily, because we're able to maintain the 4% in our unassigned fund balance, we do have cash flow to get us through.
And I want to just touch on one comment with that CNI challenge. It's competitive, right? So there's never a guarantee that you get those funds. So you can go after it. What sets those terms, the development of those programs, they're looking for certain metrics. And if we do everything that we can to apply and meet those metrics, there's not a guarantee we'd even be able to get access to that grant.
Have you worked with other schools that have?
Yeah, although a lot of them choose not to go through that pathway because, again, it's not guaranteed and it's competitive. So there's a lot of work on the front end that you have for the submission without the guarantee that you're going to get it back. So they typically go more of a traditional, like, through the SBC charge and that sort of grant related to the funds that are allocated.
And the financial review of the payback doesn't include any grant reductions on any of the funds. That was done neutral to any money you may or may not get back. So it gives you a good snapshot of, what we're realistically forecasting for something like this.
And as they're stating, there's a lot of work that goes into applying for a grant, so there's usually upfront costs with that would go to the person that is applying for that grant for you. So I know BOCES has a coaster that is a grant writing coaster that we actually subscribe to, but there is a cost associated with every grant that you apply for, and it's not guaranteed as well.
If we made the decision to do the heat pumps, like I know you were talking about the boiler plants, does this prohibit us in the future from any plans? So like if we did the heat pumps for these situations and we want to do something else in the future, these are pretty much standalone. I know the boiler's the backup heating if this gets too cold, but does this change anything?
I wouldn't say so,
Okay.
no. This unit has standalone cooling integrated through the heat pump mechanism, right? It's got the heating and the cooling, but it's not tied to a chilled water plant or a separate hydronic system that provides cooling. So if you went to the route of providing a centralized cooling system, for example, this unit wouldn't connect to that, wouldn't have the ability to connect to that. But it certainly wouldn't negate your desire or ability to do that. It just would mean that this unit stays its own until potentially a future point when it could be considered to be brought onto that other system. The hot water is definitely needed, unfortunately, right now with our climate. Heat pumps are great. They're great technology, and they're great for certain climate zones. And when you start getting cold enough like we are, that's when they start to break down. And that temperature range that Brett asked about is very important to remember. What happens at the lower temps, the unit has to defrost. It freezes on the coils on the outside, and it has to take the heat from putting it into the building and putting it into the coil to defrost itself. And when that happens, you're not heating your building. So that's when the hot water really has to kick in and make sure you can maintain heat, because we can all agree we got to keep heat in the building. Right? So that's kind of what's happening on the back.
We would be using the boiler system anyway for the rest of the building. So it's not, I don't want to say it's a negligible, but it's like, it already is there. So this cuts that cost and that carbon usage for all those temperatures. We could do it. And then knowing we would be using this anyway at that point.
You already have the infrastructure. You already have the money that was invested in the existing capital plant to make it high efficiency. And we're just continuing to take advantage of that source of higher efficiency energy to the best of our advantage at this point.
Yeah, and if you went back to that table, you would see the traditional solution, how high the amount, you're at 10,000 therms for the consumption versus 2,000. So
yeah, you're
it's
still
a pretty
using
big
some
difference.
energy in
Yeah.
the heat pump unit for sure.
Yeah, for the monogas.
I was looking, I'm like, oh.
So when you mentioned that the one of the potential cons of the heat pump system is training facilities to repair, like how in depth of training, like how big a learning curve is it going from what we have now or the traditional model to something like this, and how much of an obstacle realistically is that for something like this?
Yeah, usually we see maybe like like the first training session might be like a 4-hour training session, or you might do like 2 4-hour sessions or something like that, because it talks about like learning about the technology and the way that you set up the controls so that you don't have someone in facilities that doesn't understand it then goes back to the control system and changes the set points or the sequence or something like that. They need to fully understand like why it's set up the way that it is and how it's operating. So it's walking through that. And then for the maintenance, it has like fans and motors, which are very familiar components. But it's like maybe the replacement of knowing that, some of the preventative maintenance on the compressor, or like what needs to be checked or how frequently that has to be checked as opposed to a traditional type system.
With the new refrigerants too, that gets a little tricky. Having staff, on payroll that has the expertise and the ability and the certifications to work on these types of systems. One, it's now with the codes, newer refrigerants makes it a little bit more complicated. With the heat pump system, makes it quite a bit more complicated. I think, in all honesty, you're probably going to see that you're going to have a service contract with someone that's going to come in and do a lot of that work. So it's going to come at an additional cost. Then there's a lead time for repair. There's a lot of other factors there too.
How do we currently service all of our air conditioners? I'm not sure who to. Mostly in-house. Okay. And yeah, well, no, we do all the offices
I know, I'm
and all the
being
district offices.
sarcastic.
Yeah,
Not as many as people would like.
You're heading in that direction. With every piece of this equipment we have, you're adding more work and more service.
Right.
I only have 2 guys that are FCC certified and have the knowledge and expertise, and they only have so many hours in a day.
So that's the one point I was.
Does that change between the AC unit and the heat pump? Because we are putting in AC, like we're putting in a cooling system.
This is a conversation we had before that.
Okay.
We keep adding AC, we're gonna have to add more staff.
Okay.
Right? That's a fact, right?
So that's almost,
Yeah.
between these two, that's a different consideration. Okay.
It's and consideration, but.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so this slide just kind of shows a summary of what we talked about, how the energy consumption decreases by about 57% with the air source heat pump. Based on the actual utility rates in the district, there's a 5 or 8% savings in the annual operating costs. And there's a 12% increase in equipment costs because the heat pump solution is more expensive. Other things, I'm just trying to think what else do we want to point out here. You know, although the natural gas would still be used for, you know, when it was very cold out, it's still a significant decrease, a 77% decrease in fossil fuel use. So it really, like, implementation considerations for installing both units are very similar. They both sit on a roof curb. They're going to be approximately the same size. I think they might even be the exact box size.
Yeah, it's just there's a little more components in the heat pump unit, which is why you have that higher weight criteria for review with structural, which does have some impact, potentially could, because we're putting these on existing structures, so we always have to take that into account.
And again, one unit probably won't have too much of an impact, but when you're looking at doing all your units, then it would be something that we would have to bring in the structural team to say, hey, do we have to do something with our roofs in order to maintain the weight of these machines?
Yeah, and sometimes you do have to, for electrification solutions, now you're increasing electric in some types of systems. This particular one, the electric specifications of both units are the same. So, and that's probably because there's some like safety factor on the traditional type system, and then the heat pump system is a little bit more efficient. So there's no difference there. So you don't have to worry about running additional power. It's the same, you know, electrical feed that you would for the traditional type.
That 63% overall carbon emissions reduction is a jump off the page number. Obviously, that's one of the reasons we're looking at this, right? It's, that is a, given everything, and a lot of considerations, but that's a number, that's like a highlight, circle that number. That is a very impressive number. And that's per, is that per unit or is that,
That's
okay.
this one unit.
One unit, okay.
And
Gotcha.
we have slides coming up almost next.
Sorry, could I hop back to the
highlight some of that.
payback period real quick?
Yeah.
So is the 16 years, what is the average lifespan of each? So like a rooftop AC unit and a heat pump?
You would realistically say they're both about the same useful life. The compressor systems, as Mel mentioned, are going to run almost twice as long when you compare a cooling only unit that runs in the summer season versus a heating unit that's going to run in both seasons. So your compressors are going to get a lot more work. You're likely going to result in failures much, much sooner. It doesn't mean you have to replace the whole unit, but now you're going to be dealing with compressor switchovers, which we do have information in here. I believe it was around $15,000.
I apologize. My limited knowledge of motors. Isn't the issue when it turns on and off? And so if this is consistently running, does it have a higher failure of the compressors?
On and off, bad sizing. If we don't do our jobs correctly and we oversize the equipment, yes, that's absolutely a concern.
Okay.
When we right size these equipment, they have specialized compressors. They have the ability, like your car, you're throttling up and down, and it's okay. If you're slamming on your throttle and slamming on your brakes, yes, that's a problem.
That's the problem. Okay.
But we're not doing that with these units.
Okay.
But cycling is an issue, right? The more you use it, the more wear and tear you absolutely are going to get.
So
Overall,
approximately
the
how many
package,
years?
15 to 20 years.
Okay, and then a traditional roof, 15 to 20 years?
Yeah,
Okay.
we usually say 20 is kind of the threshold target. Yeah.
Hope for a few more. And
Yeah. Which we've done.
where we ride it out going, it can make it.
If you are looking at decarbonization, yes, that number jumps out. And that's kind of where I started was, depends on what you're looking at. So this goal, the goal is to give you all the data and find what really sets the tone for you guys as a board and as a community and how you want to approach projects like this and technology like this. It does have a cost. It has a cost as a first cost, and that eventually it comes into a payback. very low payback when you consider all things. Yes, it's less than the average life of the unit, but if you said, we want to do a project that's fiscally focused, that we want to do everything we can to get any payback to what would be an aggressive target, we would say 3 to 5 years is really where you want to be on a payback number, and this is 16 years. So yes, it's within the life of the unit, but it's on the far end of what would, you look at a payback number and say, do we want to expend capital like that for that kind of a number? Now, we're not talking huge numbers right now on this unit because we already are putting cooling in. It's only a $10,000 delta, but this is one unit. If we add 6, 8, 10 units, it starts to add up pretty quick.
So the 6-year payback for the AC, is that the second bullet? The assumption is we pay back the AC over 6 years, but
No, so basically the reason why there's a 16 and a 6 is because we had previously sent
that was the RG&E rates?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you had different electric rates, it would show differently in terms of your payback.
Yeah, you're blessed with the lower rates, but that comes
the longer
at
payback. Do we have a payback timeline for the traditional AC?
So the traditional is considered kind of the baseline.
Okay.
So there's no payback.
Okay.
That is the cost,
of doing business.
Yeah, you're comparing
just the 10,000
cost
different
to add to go to the heat pump unit against the time it would take to pay that.
So because we have such a lower rate,
we save less money during the year on electric, so it takes longer to make that back.
Correct.
okay, but it's still just the 10,000.
Yeah, the 10,000 additional for that unit.
I don't mean to say just the 10,000, like that's a lot of money.
And then when you factor in the third bullet there is the compressor is the one thing that we thought might go after 10 years because of that continuous running, which is an additional 15,000. You're right, when you're talking about one machine, the numbers don't throw off the page, especially when you're receiving your building aid on these dollars anyway, with factoring in your maximum cost allowances. The thing is, when you think of if you go for your whole building and you go your whole district, that's when it could add up and it could be a little bit more of a differential.
If the compressor fails, do we get building aid on that, or is that out of our?
The compressor, no. If you do that out of a maintenance out of your general fund, you wouldn't get the building aid on that, but you get the building aid on the units. That extra $10,000 that you're spending, you do receive the building aid on it.
Yep, and then I think we went over all the points on this slide except for the last one. We just wanted to show you like what it meant in terms of carbon. So there's a little metrics here. So it kind of shows you the equivalent greenhouse gas emissions that are saved. It's 76,000 pounds of CO2, so that's equivalent to like, over 3,000 gallons in gasoline, coal, like, 38 pounds, although I don't know if I would know what that means. Or like how many homes, maybe it would power 5 homes for a year. So it's just kind of interesting, the metrics on that.
My first question when I saw the homes, I'm like, are they ranches? Are they,
Yeah, what are we talking
are they mansions here?
A mix.
Yeah. And then the other thing to think about too is, putting it into perspective, you could buy renewable energy credits instead of, if you wanted to focus on decarbonization or a way to kind of contribute to that. You could buy these renewable energy credits, which basically fund like decarbonization type things and renewable energy and bolster the grid and help fund other sorts of things that research into just renewable energy sources. So we looked at the cost of what a REC would be. Right now they're running about between $1 and $50 each. If you add up how many RECs you would need for the 76,000 pounds of carbon, you would actually have to pay 40 grand, like almost $41,000 to do an equivalent number of RECs for the carbon savings that you're getting by if you were to implement the heat pump system. So it just kind of puts it in perspective. You're spending 10 grand when if you had to buy the RECs, you'd spend 40 to get the same carbon impact, if that makes sense.
Superintendent Provenzano, we didn't have to make a decision tonight, right?
Yeah,
This was the learning.
This was just a learning opportunity, and as in any project, as you go through the bidding process, there'll be a decision point, and we'll keep the board informed, and we'll continue to study it and ask these questions. I think you gave us a great platform for us to continue to build on our knowledge and the board's decision on if there are opportunities for alternative projects, and this could
Sorry,
be a
one more.
possibility.
Sorry. Do we think Dudley, Northside, and JA would be similar-ish cost differential?
Very, very similar.
Okay.
Where we are putting cooling integral to the air handler systems, the heat pump solution option is quite similar.
Okay.
We haven't done any analysis on those, but expectations would be that they would be fairly close. When you evaluate this on a unit that you're going to put in that does not have cooling in it, and then you want to say we want to add a heat pump, your costs are going to be through the roof. Your paybacks are going to be 40 plus years.
Double checking question.
Yeah.
Two Dudley Northside, they're not, are they the same?
No, because it goes on top of like the library space.
I just want to make sure.
So Dudley Northside, would it be one unit for Dudley Northside or would it be two?
In this case, it would be potentially two at Dudley Northside.
One for libraries?
Yeah, that's yeah. It would be one for the cafeteria, one for the library. At not 4 units, 2 units. Yes, Dudley Northside would be combined, and then J. Yes.
Yeah, so we just
Essentially, yes. Yes.
Sorry.
Total for the space of Dudley and Northside, how many units would we need?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I missed.
Not
Yeah.
the whole thing. We're doing libraries in both and cafeterias in both, right?
Library, cafeteria, and any large group instruction spaces. So 4.
Yeah.
2 and 2. 4.
2 and 2. Okay,
4
thank you.
units at Northside and Dudley.
See, I remember the spaces, Troy. Troy's laughing.
Sorry. They all blend together.
And then one at Brooks Hill and then one at JA.
Brooks Hill is the one. JA would be the one. Trying to think. JP would have the one. Yeah. So yeah, Northside Dudley would have the most at 4. Yeah.
Just getting a sense of how many.
Yeah. I think when we looked at it originally, it was around 8 units, 8 to 10 units total across the 2 projects would potentially fall into candidates for the heat pumps. Yeah.
So more to come, and we appreciate the education session for developing it as we go through the bidding process.
Thank you,
Great.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
your time.
Yeah, great timing, Rich.
Yeah, so we are going to, actually adjourn. Do we need a motion to? Yep, so
Enter exec.
that's what I was gonna do.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said adjourn.
We're not gonna have our next, that's all. So, I need a motion to enter into exec session. Brian?
Second.
I think that was Mary Caitlin. If you're watching from home, we will be leaving and then coming back for our business meeting, but we will just re-adjourn to exit later.
You gotta vote. You have to vote.
Executive session.
Yeah. All in favor? Yeah, sorry, I was just reading something. And there are 6 now. Okay, 6.
You're voting? I don't know, do it like,